Hi, this is Marva L. Collins, and my daughter and Tamala and I are a part founders of Nurture Bloom. And we work with adult daughters in finding some resolution to their first wounding. And just a reminder, we were all daughters first, long before we were mothers or any other roles, students, all the other roles that we have. So remember, we were daughters first. And daughters, many daughters, are wounded. And we want to help resolve some of that. And we do that through workshops, one-on-one coaching, and various other ways that we will talk about at another time. But today, I have to respond to the post that Tamala made on Monday, and that had to do with first time. And we all know that doing something for the first time, there's a learning curve. There is definitely a learning curve. And many times, this is where daughters get their first woundings, because their daughter mother is doing something for the first time, something that she hasn't done before. And even if you were the 10th daughter, she never raised you before. She's still doing it for the first time. And many times, first times are handled inappropriately because we think we ought to know what we don't know. So what Tamala asked me to do was kind of respond to where my head was at when I gave her the answer of, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm learning. This is the first time I've ever done this. This is the first time I've ever been a mother at all. Not even a mother for the second or third time. This is the very first time I've done this. So what was going through my head at the time? First of all, number one, numero uno, I was afraid of getting it wrong. I was afraid of not getting it right. And for a while in my parenting, I was trying to get it right. I had the Dr. Spock book, and I worked with it religiously. I followed the rules in doing it all right. And then at some point, I recognized that Tamala was not that prototype in that book. She was who she was, and trying to make her fit what the book said was causing me some frustrations because I wasn't having all of the same experiences. And because I was so young, I thought I should be having all of the same experiences. I was having some, I had the terrible twos and a lot of the other stuff that was in the book. But as she started to develop her own personality, it became a little more challenging. And coming up against that personality, I always, that was a word that I've gotten rid of now. But at that point, I always felt like I needed to stay a step ahead and to anticipate what was coming next. And many times I was able to anticipate what I was coming next. And I was fortunate I had a child who was obedient and helpful. So that was good. That saved me a lot. But then when she started to come into adolescence, that changed. She started paying attention to how other kids were being mothered. and started to make some comparisons. And then coming up with some things on her own as well. So she started to question some of the things that I was doing in raising her. And needless to say, that was pretty frustrating for me because I was doing the absolute best I could. So what I decided, and I don't know how I decided this, that this is just what came up. I was not going to play that mother role that I had seen played out with some of my friends and with their parents and with their own parenting of mothering of their children. I was not going to take the God with a small G position. I was going to, although I did say this from time to time, but I was not going to be of the attitude of because I said so. That I wanted to find another way. And when she challenged me, I wanted to look at that in a way other than disrespectful. And I'm going to tell you why. Because my grandmother raised me, and she allowed me to question her decisions. And she let me know that that wasn't disrespectful. I wanted to know why. And it didn't mean that I didn't have to do it, but I still was able to question and at least get me some kind of answer that would make doing it go down easier. So I wanted to work with the modeling that Mama had shown me, that it was okay for her to have questions. It was okay for her not to understand why I did something, or why I said something, or why there was a rule in place. But this particular time, she had challenged me enough times that I was exasperated. And obviously, out of my exasperation, something came out of my mouth that impacted her forever. And that something was, I've never done this before. This is the first time I've ever been a parent. I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm learning as I go and practicing on you. And with that, I put a period behind it and probably spun around on my heels and went someplace else. I don't remember. But that was my my way of finishing a conversation, was to turn on my heels and leave the room. I had no idea that this was going to have such an impact on her life. No idea whatsoever. I was often asked by my peers, how did I come up with such creative things in raising my children? I don't know. All I had was the role model of my grandmother. I didn't have any classes or any of that. I just had Mama. I remember having a friend visiting me one day, and I had said to one of my daughters, I don't remember which one, but I think it was, I'm pretty sure, I do remember which one. It was my second daughter, Catherine, and I asked her to wash dishes. We got several wash dishes stories with Catherine, but this particular time I asked her to wash dishes while this person was at my house, and she didn't want to do that, and I told her she had to do it. So at that point, she started slamming cabinet doors and stomping and making a ruckus. And I just kept talking to my friend. And I later learned that my friend was waiting for me to do something to make her stop. And in our subsequent conversation, I explained to my friend is that Catherine was angry. She didn't want to wash dishes, and she was mad about it. So she was expressing her anger, and that was okay with me for her to express her anger. And as long as she wasn't destructive, as long as she was just slamming doors and stomping, that was okay with me. That she could do that. And when she, but when she finished expressing her anger, she still had to wash dishes. And they understood that I was okay with them expressing feelings, because we all got them. And many times I've seen kids' feelings suppressed because the adult thought it was at them. And it wasn't. She wasn't angry at me. She might have projected it that way. She was angry because she didn't want to wash dishes. And I knew the difference between her being angry at me and angry because she didn't want to wash dishes. So I always, there's that word again, I allowed them, not always, I allowed them to have feelings. I allowed them to express feelings. Because here's the thing, they were going to express them whether I allowed it or not. By me allowing it, they did it directly. But had I not allowed it, little passive-aggressive things would happen. So once they got the anger out, they were done with it. They didn't have to do any little passive-aggressive things like maybe break my favorite cup by accident. But it's going to come out in some way or another. We did a lot of creative things at our house. They had creative ways of handling me as well, because that's what they observed, that's what they saw. But first times, do not resent your first time learning. It is such a gift, especially when you admit that you don't know. But you're learning. I don't know, but I'm learning. I want to get this right, so I'm going to practice on you. This is Marva L. Collins of Nurture Bloom, and I'll be back next Thursday with an answer to whatever Tamala puts before us next Monday. I'll be back with this on Thursday next.